David frowned. I'm really the owner here. I have the key to the house inside. David said and took out the key. This key was given to David by Reuben. The key was inlaid with the Golden Pine logo. It was very delicate, and the authenticity of the key could be seen at a glance. The security guard took the key and looked at David again. Say, where did this key come from? This is the key to the Hilltop Villa in Pine. This villa is the most expensive. It was bought by Master Sue. Why? Maybe it's in your hands. When David heard it, he was stunned. He didn't expect that the villa that Reuben gave him was the most expensive one in Pine Bay. This gift is really not small. This is what Mr. Sue gave me. David said truthfully. Nonsense. I think if you definitely stole this, or picked it up, how could it be given to you? The security guard shouted loudly, then waved his hand, and 4 or 5 security guards surrounded him. Take care of them, I'll call. The security guard gave an order just now, and then hurriedly left with the car key. Seeing this, Chen Baoguo hurriedly pulled Barbara out of the taxi, and the taxi driver was also frightened, put down David's things, and drove away. David, what's wrong? What happened? Barbara couldn't see it, so she could only ask suspiciously. Mom, it's all right, we'll go in after a while, it's just a routine inspection, the security of Pine Bay is very strict. David comforted Barbara. Of course, this is the best villa area in Horrendous. Mom can smell the fragrance of flowers here. Barbara looked excited. Chen Baoguo looked at David angrily. Now they were stopped and surrounded by security. Obviously something went wrong. He didn't believe that David would have a friend who would lend him a house in Pine Bay. At this moment, a black Mercedes-Benz slowly stopped in front of David and them. Hey, isn't this David? How did your family come here? With so many things, wouldn't it be moving to Pine Bay? The door opened, and Fu Wei stepped down from the co-pilot, looking at David with a sarcastic expression. Then Delia and Zhang Wenjing also got out of the car. The 3 of them jokingly looked at David's family. They also came to Pine Bay, mainly because Delia wanted to show off the wedding room Jordan bought in Pine Bay, so they brought Fu Wei and Zhang Wenjing here. As a result, we happened to encounter such a scene, and the 3 of them just happened to watch the excitement. David glanced at the 3 people coldly and ignored them. How is this going? Delia asked a security guard. The security guard didn't dare to offend Delia when he saw that Delia was dressed beautifully and was driving a Mercedes-Benz, and said in a low voice, Miss, these people said they were the owners of Pine Bay, and they even took out the keys to the villa inside. Our captain suspects that key was picked up or stolen by them, so I went to check. As soon as the security guard's words came out, the 3 of Delia burst into laughter, out of breath. Ha ha ha, David, you are such a goddamn talent. Take the villa key and come running and say that you are the owner. Are you stupid yourself, or are you treating others as a fool? Fu Wei smiled, his eyes full of ridicule. Do you know how much the villa here costs? Can you afford it? With your old road sweeper, you won't be able to buy a villa here for 100 years. Zhang Wenjing couldn't help laughing. Hurry up and drive these people away, especially this guy. He is a reformed through labor prisoner and was released today. If you let him in, it will affect the reputation of the community. Delia pointed at David and said. Chapter 22. When several security guards heard this, they all became nervous and took out their batons. If David was really a prisoner of reform through labor who had just been released, the owners of the community would definitely feel uncomfortable when they found out. David, why don't you get out of here with your blind mother and your street sweeper? Do you really need the security guard to leave? Fu Wei looked at David with a sneer. What did you say? David clenched his fists tightly when he heard Fu Wei talking about his parents. Why, you still want to hit me? Fu Wei was not afraid at all, he couldn't help laughing, and walked up to David. I know you studied in prison twice, but do you know what this place is? Do you want to do it? Believe it or not, I am sending you in. Fu Wei looked arrogant and pushed David fiercely. David, let's go, let's go. Barbara took David's arm and said in a pleading voice. She was afraid that David was causing trouble. She had to know that David had just been released today and had a criminal record. If she was sent in again because of a fight, Barbara would really not have the courage to live. At this time, Chen Baoguo's face was blue with anger, and he glared at David and said, if you don't take your things and go back, you will be embarrassed. Chen Baoguo began to pack his things and was about to walk back with his back. He really couldn't afford to lose this man. Ha ha ha, hurry up, let me see you, I will definitely avenge the revenge of that slap. Fu Wei scolded David fiercely. Okay, hurry up and get in the car. Talking to this kind of person will lose your identity. Delia called out to Fu Wei. Then the three of them got into the car and drove directly into the Pinerest Villa area. Mom, wait a minute, this villa is really lent to me by a friend. David persuaded Barbara not to worry. Wait for what? Waiting for a while to be embarrassed and beaten out. Chen Baoguo shouted at David. David opened his mouth to refute and wanted to quarrel with his father, but looking at his father's white hair, David's words came to his mouth and he swallowed them back. At this moment, the security captain with the key ran back in a hurry, and after seeing David, he immediately flattered. Mr. Chen, I'm really sorry, we made a mistake, damn it, now we send you up. After finishing speaking, the security captain yelled at the security guards with batons. Don't put away the sticks, go drive, and take Mr. Chen's family in. Oh. Several security guards nodded hurriedly, then drove to a car, loaded things into the car, and sent David's family into Pine Bay. In the car, Chen Baoguo's face changed and changed. He wanted to talk to David, but he didn't know what to say. David, I didn't expect it to be true. What kind of friend are you, who dares to lend you such a villa? Barbara was sitting in the car, smelling the fragrance of the flowers in the Pinerest Villa area, not to mention her excitement. Mom, if you have a chance, I'll let you meet my friend. David knew that Barbara was curious, so he planned to find an opportunity for Sonia to meet his parents. In front of a villa halfway up the mountain in Pine Bay, Delia's car stopped, and all three got out of the car. Delia, you are so lucky, this villa is so luxurious, and with this scenery, if I had a house like this, I would be willing to live 10 years less. Zhang Wenjing looked at the villa in front of her with envy in her eyes. What's the matter? This Pinerest villa, but the more expensive it is, the more expensive it is. The most expensive one is the villa on the roof, and I don't know that it was bought by the big guy. Delia said, looking towards the direction of the top of the mountain. Chapter 23. At this moment, a car passed in front of them, the window was open, David's face was exposed, with a sneer on his face, he was looking at the three of Delia. David, isn't the man in the car David? Fu Wei was the first to spot David and shouted loudly. Delia and Zhang Wenjing also discovered David at this time. Seeing the sneer on David's face, Delia was furious. How did this guy get in? Are these security guards trash? Delia roared. Could this guy really be the owner? Didn't you see that the driver was also a security guard and sent them in? Zhang Wenjing frowned, looking puzzled. They are still driving up the mountain, are their villas still up there? Fu Wei also raised his head, watching the vehicle drive farther and farther, higher and higher. Impossible, it is absolutely impossible for David to buy a house here. I know the details of his family best. Delia vehemently denied that. She knew that David could not have the money to buy a house here. Will it be given to him by the Su family? I remember that Mr. Su said that David seemed to save his life. Zhang Wenjing analyzed it carefully. It's possible. Fu Wei nodded. This guy didn't know what kind of shish tea he had, but he saved Mr. Su's life. Otherwise, David would definitely die at the Regal Hotel today. Delia gritted her teeth, then opened the car door and said, follow up and have a look. Delia must check to see if David really has a house in this Pine Bay. Delia's Mercedes-Benz followed, watching David and the others driving all the way to the top of the mountain. This David's house is not the most expensive one on the top of the mountain, right? Zhang Wenjing looked at the car in front of him driving all the way to the top of the mountain, and said in shock. How is it possible that the house on the top of the mountain is worth at least 100 million? Even if David's family is sold, he can't afford it. Even if it is given by the Su family, it is impossible to be generous enough to give away a house worth 100 million. Fu Wei couldn't believe it. But soon, the car in front really reached the top of the mountain, but Delia and their Mercedes-Benz were stopped. Hello lady, you can't go forward because it's a private place. A security guard stopped Delia's car. David had already discovered that Delia and the others were following, and seeing that they were stopped, a sneer appeared on David's face. After reaching the top of the mountain, the entire top of the mountain is surrounded by clouds and mist, like a fairyland. Chen Baoguo and David were stunned by this scene. Barbara couldn't see it, but she felt the fresh air around her, and her face was full of intoxication. Several security guards moved David and his things into the house, and the security captain apologized to David again before leaving. Mom, you and my dad will live here in the future. The air here is very good and suitable for you to recuperate. David took Barbara's hand and walked towards the villa. When Chen Baoguo entered the villa, he was stunned. He had never seen such a magnificent appearance in his life. At this time, Chen Baoguo opened his mouth. He wanted to apologize to David. After all, he had misunderstood, but no matter how hard he tried, Chen Baoguo couldn't say anything. After walking around the house, David said, "Dad, Mom, I'll take you outside for a walk and get to know the road. Don't get lost by then." All right, tell Mom about it. Although Mom can't see it, she can feel it. Barbara's face was full of wrinkles when she smiled. "Mom, don't worry, I will definitely heal your eyes." David took his parents out of the villa and admired the view from the top of the mountain. Chapter 24. While introducing Barbara, David felt a trace of freshness from nature, which was also mixed with aura. To know that David cultivates, all he needs is aura. The aura here is obviously much richer than the one below, which is more helpful for David to practice. This is really a good place to practice. David couldn't help sighing. "What did you say?" Barbara asked. "Oh, nothing, I said this is a really good place to retire." David smiled faintly. When they turned to the road where they came, they found that the three of Delia had not left. At this time, the three of them saw David appear, and all focused their attention on David. David looked at Delia and the others with a sneer. A few people were separated by a gate in the middle, but this gate became a symbol of two identities. David looked down at the three with disdain in his eyes. Looking at David like that, Delia gritted her teeth in anger. She couldn't understand how this David became the owner of the hilltop villa. "David, your friend is really good. I'm willing to lend you such a nice villa. When you have time, ask your friend to have a meal together." Barbara didn't know that Delia was right in front of her, so she said to David. "Okay." David nodded. "Damn, it turned out to be borrowed. I thought it was his." When Delia heard this, she felt a lot of joy in her heart. "I asked a friend to ask. This villa belongs to the Su family. It seems that David borrowed it to pretend to be coercive." Fu Wei took the mobile phone and looked at the information above and said, "This guy saved that Ruben's life. This is the plan to eat on the Su family for a lifetime. He even borrowed the villa to pretend to be a force." Zhang Wenjing sneered. All three looked at David with contempt, and no longer had the dwarf-headed feeling just now. "Even if I borrowed the villa, I'm better than you. If you have the ability, come up." David listened to the sour mockery of the three, and hooked his hands towards the three. "David, don't be complacent. I don't believe the Su family will protect you for the rest of your life." Delia spat fiercely and turned away. They didn't like the way they looked up at David like this. "David, don't have any contact with that Delia in the future. That kind of woman is a snake and scorpion. Anyone who gets close will be bitten." After Barbara heard Delia's voice, she persuaded David. "Mom, I see, let's go around." David supported Barbara and continued to turn around, and Chen Baoguo followed behind with his hands behind his back. "After I was tired from shopping, I went back to the villa to rest." At this time, a red Porsche stopped at the entrance of the villa. David saw that it was Sonia who was here. "Miss Su, why are you here?" David asked in surprise. "Don't always call me from Miss Su. Miss Su, I have a name, just call me Sonia." Sonia said to David, "I heard that the security guard here called and said that they suspected that you had stolen the keys and stopped you. I was afraid of some misunderstanding, so I rushed over." Seeing that Sonia came here specially for this matter, David said with gratitude, "It's all right, the misunderstanding has been explained clearly, but there is something I need your help." "What's the matter? Tell me." Sonia nodded. "I told my parents that the house was borrowed. You just happened to be here, so go in and help me deal with it, and say that you lent me the house. I don't want my parents to know about many things," David said in a low voice. "It's easy to do." Sonia smiled slightly and thought about walking inside the villa, but just after taking 2 steps, suddenly turned her head to look at David. "Do you think I am meeting my parents?" David was at a loss for words and was stunned on the spot. Chapter 25. "Just kidding with you, it scared you." Sonia smiled and walked into the villa. David gave a wry smile and followed suit. In fact, after Sonia just said what she said to her parents, David's heart really throbbed. He is just an ordinary person who can't be more ordinary, and Sonia is the eldest miss of the Su family. The difference between the two's identities is too great, so David is a little scared. "Dad, Mom, this is the friend I told you to lend me a house, Sonia." Entering the villa, David followed Chen Baoguo and Barbara to introduce. As soon as they heard that this house belonged to someone else, Barbara and Chen Baoguo, who were sitting on the sofa, hurriedly stood up. Hello, uncle. Hello, auntie. I came in a hurry, and I didn't buy any gifts for the two of you. Sonia said very politely. Miss Sue is very kind. You can lend such a nice house to my family, David. Our family doesn't know what to say. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid we would never be able to live in such a nice house in our lifetime. Barbara looked humble. After speaking, she pushed Chen Baoguo next to her. Old man, hurry up and pour tea for Miss Sue. Oh. Chen Baoguo nodded hurriedly. Chen Baoguo looked stupid just now. He really didn't expect David to have such a beautiful friend, and looking at Sonia's dress and temperament, she must be the daughter of a big family and a wealthy family, otherwise it would be impossible to buy Pine Villa. If Chen Baoguo were to know that Sonia was the daughter of Reuben, the richest man in Horrendous, he would be shocked. Uncle, don't be busy, I'll do it myself. Sonia hurried up to meet her and poured herself a cup of tea. And then poured a cup of red jujube tea for Chen Baoguo and Barbara. This is Sonia's home, of course she knows where things are. Uncle, auntie, this is red jujube tea. It has a faint sweet taste, but it is very effective in lowering lipids and blood pressure. It is suitable for your elderly to drink. Sonia put the tea in front of Chen Baoguo and Barbara. Miss Sue is too polite, although I can't see it, but I can tell from the voice that Miss Sue is a beautiful woman with a kind heart. If anyone can marry Miss Sue, it will be a blessing in 8 lifetimes. Barbara said something in her words. No matter what Sonia's identity is, to be able to lend such an expensive villa to David, it proves that he doesn't hate David, and even has a good impression of David, otherwise, who would be an ordinary friend who would lend such an expensive villa? So Barbara thought about what Sonia said. Let's see what Sonia means. Auntie, how can I be as good as you say? In fact, I have a bad temper, and David thought I was bad, and even yelled at me. How could Sonia not understand the meaning of Barbara's words, so she smiled and said half-jokingly. Really? Barbara was stunned, and immediately waved to Sonia. Miss Sue, you come to me. In fact, my family David is usually quite honest, but sometimes he looks like a stubborn donkey. That's up to his father. If he dares to yell at you, tell me, and I will teach him a lesson for you. When Sonia heard this, she giggled, like a stubborn donkey. While laughing, Sonia did not forget to look at David, making David look embarrassed. Mom, don't talk nonsense, people are still busy and don't have time to sit and chat with you. David was planning to let Sonia leave, otherwise, he might not know what else Barbara could say. It's okay, I like chatting with Auntie. Sonia actually sat next to Barbara. This time, Barbara couldn't close her mouth with a smile, grabbed Sonia's hand, and the two started chatting for more than 2 hours, until it was dark, and Sonia left. Chapter 26. David, Miss Sue is really good. You can tell she's a big lady by listening to her words, but she doesn't have any airs at all. You have to work hard. Sonia walked back. Barbara said to David. Mom, we are just ordinary friends. David said helplessly. David, I think Miss Sue is not bad. Listen to your mother's words and work hard. Your father is always right. At this time, Chen Baoguo also spoke. You must know that Chen Baoguo would not follow David to say these words easily. This time, it seemed that he really liked Sonia. He felt that Sonia was good, so he persuaded David. Okay, don't worry about it. David was speechless for a while and walked into the bedroom. After entering the bedroom, David did not lie down to sleep directly, but sat cross-legged, closed his eyes slightly, his mind moved, and the concentration art began to activate, and the surrounding spiritual energy rushed towards David like a tide. For the past 3 years, David has been persevering in his cultivation and has never rested for a day. This is also the request of Irvin. Although he is out of prison and Irvin can no longer control him, David will persevere. Soon, the aura from the top of the mountain, accompanied by David's breathing, slowly entered David's body. These auras formed a small vortex around David's body, and were then inhaled by David. Now David is only at the strength of the Qi training period, so he absorbs less spiritual energy in breathing. Even if he inhales a lot of spiritual energy, his current body cannot be consumed all at once. He needs to gradually increase his strength. Time flies, and soon the sun appears on the horizon, and David slowly opened his eyes. Taking a long breath, David felt that his body was more comfortable than ever before. The spiritual energy here is much richer and purer than that in the prison. After practicing, there is no trace of fatigue. David, it's time for breakfast. Barbara's voice sounded outside. David stretched his muscles and bones, opened the door and walked out. The breakfast was made by Chen Baoguo. It was very rich, and after Sonia's arrival yesterday, Chen Baoguo's attitude towards David was obviously much softer, at least with a smile on his face, not so old-fashioned. After breakfast, Barbara asked Chen Baoguo to accompany him to go out for a walk, while David planned to go down the mountain and go to an antique market to see if he could find spiritual brushes and cinnabar. He wants to cure his mother's illness as soon as possible, so that his mother can see the light again. Halfway up the mountain, in Delia's villa, Delia, Fu Wei and Zhang Wenjing stayed here without leaving at night. At this time, Delia looked angry, thinking of the wedding that was destroyed by David yesterday. She was not angry for a while, and now David is still living on top of her head. How can Delia endure it? Fu Wei, when will the buddies you mentioned arrive? Delia asked Fu Wei. Come on, my buddies are all trainers, and it's more than enough to fight David, and they are all mixed in the Tao, absolutely enough loyalty. Fu Wei knew that Delia was not angry, so he called a few friends to come over, ready to deal with David, and also to avenge himself with a slap in the face. That's good. I don't believe that David will never go down the mountain, and the Su family can take care of him for the rest of his life. Delia gritted her teeth. This rubbish broke Brother Lei's arm and ruined my wedding, damn it. After speaking angrily, Delia looked at Fu Wei and said, I'm going to the hospital to see Brother Lei, and I'll leave David's affairs to you. Once the matter is done, the benefits will not be less. No problem, just wait for my good news. Fu Wei nodded happily. Chapter 27. David walked down the mountain, but just as he was halfway up the mountain, he was stopped by 4 or 5 people. David, I've been waiting for you for a long time, and you've come down. Fu Wei looked at David with a sneer. Behind Fu Wei, several people were holding sticks with fierce expressions on their faces. Wait for me. David glanced at Fu Wei coldly. If it's a fight, you are not enough for me to fight. Yesterday, I brought down a dozen people from the Xiao family. You think you can deal with them with just a few people? Ha ha ha, David, I'm afraid you don't know who I am looking for today, so you dare to say such a big thing, and you will know when you kneel down and beg for mercy and cry for your father and mother. Fu Wei smiled and didn't take David seriously at all. Yesterday, Fu Wei saw it. The dozen or so bald people were all gangsters, and they had no strength at all. They were knocked down with one punch by David. But today was different. The few people he was looking for were all trainees, and they were all good players with 1 against 10, and it was more than enough to deal with David. It seems that a slap really hit you lightly, and you should have broken your hands and feet at that time, so you don't have to jump in front of me. David glanced at Fu Wei and said. Damn, you are still mentioning what happened yesterday. If I beat you to the ground and beg for mercy today, I will not be named Fu. As Fu Wei said, he turned to look at the few people behind him and said, Brothers, beat this kid to the ground and beg for mercy. Someone will pay 100,000 for hard work. Whether or not you can earn this money is up to you. As soon as they heard that there were 100,000 hard work fees, the eyes of several people began to light up. Don't worry, you said let him cry, we will never let him laugh. You said let him kneel, we will never let him stand. Just because this kid is so weak, I'll make him cry for his father and mother. Several people looked at David with disdain, and they didn't take David seriously at all. The 100,000 is from Delia, right? David asked Fu Wei. Yes, I'm not afraid to tell you, don't you dare to trouble her. You beat the son of the Xiao family, it is impossible for the Xiao family to let you go, I'm just giving you an appetizer in advance. Fu Wei nodded unabashedly. Well, it seems that I really shouldn't be merciful. David spread out his hands helplessly, and then suddenly kicked Fu Wei. Hearing a bang, Fu Wei's body flew out instantly. A few people who were still full of disdain just now, their expressions froze for a moment, and they all couldn't believe the scene in front of them. To know that it takes a lot of strength to kick people away with one kick, it seems that David really has 2 strokes. Cough cough cough. Fu Wei fell to the ground, coughed up a mouthful of blood, and then roared hideously, Kill him, kill him. 4 or 5 people glanced at each other, remembering the hard work of 100,000, and they all rushed forward with gritted teeth. These people really have practiced, and cooperate with each other tacitly. Tiny. David sneered, and then went up to meet him. Bang bang bang. In less than half a minute, all the trainees whom Fu Wei had found fell to the ground and wailed, each with a very painful expression. This time, Fu Wei was dumbfounded, he swallowed his saliva, his expression full of surprise. He really couldn't imagine what David had gone through in prison for 3 years, how could he become so powerful? You must know that the few people I was looking for were all from the martial arts school in the past, and now they are all famous in the Tao, and they were beaten down by David. Are you still killing me? David looked at Fu Wei playfully, and slowly walked towards Fu Wei, who fell to the ground. What are you going to do? Fu Wei's face was full of horror, and he kept stepping back. This is Yuan Delia's idea, But before Fu Wei's words were finished, David stepped down and stepped directly on Fu Wei's arm. Fu Wei let out a scream, followed by a severe pain in his entire arm. Fu Wei's arm is broken. Don't use Delia to oppress me, whether it's her or that Jordan, I won't let them off easily. After David finished speaking, he turned around and left, ignoring Fu Wei's screams. Chapter 28. Horrendous Antique Street. This is the largest antique street in the entire Zhongbei. Many antique lovers will come here to shop for treasures. There are stalls on both sides of the street. In this place, there are almost no things you can't buy, but the authenticity of the things depends on your own ability. Even the knowledgeable experts here have a punch. The counterfeiting technology in this place is too strong. All things are mixed. Whether you can find treasures depends on your own strength and luck. David had never been to such a place before, and now, seeing the dazzling array of things, he felt a little curious. Seeing David like this, many stall owners showed joy on their faces. This is obviously a stunned young man. It is the first time to come here. Such people are best to lie. Little brother, what do you want? I have everything here, guaranteed to be genuine. A greasy and fat stall owner held David with a warm smile on his face, and then said in David's ear, I tell you, these things I have dug out of the ground, and they have been around for thousands of years. History, if you buy it, the price is guaranteed to double. David glanced at the stall owner of the fat man. The stall was only 2 meters long, and there were more than a dozen scattered items. They looked very old, and some bronzes were covered with patina. Seeing David looking at his stall, the fat stall owner became even more enthusiastic. Little brother, you can choose whatever you like and see which one you like. Because I have patients at home, I am anxious to sell these things, otherwise I will not sell them. Woolen cloth. David ignored the stall owner, but squatted down, picked up a rusty iron lump, and looked at it carefully. Because these things in front of them are all lifeless, only this inconspicuous iron lump, which actually exudes a trace of spiritual energy. Little brother, you really have a good eye. This is a guard waist badge from the Qing dynasty, but it was soaked in water under the ground, and now it's rusted into an iron lump, but it is also an item in the palace. If you like it, 10,000 the block is sold to you. The fat stall owner saw that David was looking at the iron lump, and immediately introduced enthusiastically. This fat man, I'm afraid he will make another fortune. I don't know where to pick up the broken iron lump, but he dares to ask for 10,000. This kind of stunned young man doesn't understand anything. It's best to lie. This time it falls into the hands of the fat man, and he will definitely be slaughtered. The surrounding vendors whispered and whispered, casting envious glances at the fat stall owner. However, it's really good stuff. David nodded, holding the iron lump. He felt more and more filled with spiritual energy inside. When the fat stall owner heard this, he smiled secretly, and then said solemnly, Of course, I'm all good things, I never lie. If it wasn't for my family's illness, I wouldn't sell it for 10,000. Well, these are all my sweethearts. The fat stall owner said. His eyes were red, and he even shed a few tears. David looked at the poor acting skills of the fat stall owner, and smiled coldly in his heart. 10,000, I want it, I'll transfer the money to you. David did not hesitate. He took out his mobile phone and prepared to transfer money. When the fat stall owner heard this, he immediately burst into joy, took the QR code and said, Little brother is really refreshing, but there is one thing I need to make clear. This thing won't go away. You can stop looking for it for a while. I'm here to return it, then I won't return it. Don't worry, since I bought it, I won't return it. I slap the eye, and I consider myself unlucky. David smiled and swept away 10,000 for the fat stall owner. Hearing the news that the money had arrived, the fat stall owner laughed. Chapter 29. At this time, many people around saw that David spent 10,000 to buy the rusty iron bump, and they all talked about it, pointing and sneering on their faces. As young as David, he still wants to come to the antique street to Taobao. Obviously he is the master of the slaughter. David ignored the comments of the people around him, and didn't care about the sound of the fat stall owner laughing. Click. With a slight sound, the iron lump actually opened a gap in David's hand, and then the gap got bigger and bigger. Damn, this kid is really strong. I bought it for 10,000. Is it just to practice hand strength? It doesn't look like a rich person when you look at it. It was damaged just after you bought it. Is it so arrogant? Everyone in the audience felt incredible. Even the fat stall owner looked straight at David, wondering what David was going to do. Soon, the iron lump burst, and then a dazzling light shone from it. A piece of jade only the size of a thumb, but crystal clear, emerald green, appeared inside. David took out the jade and threw away the rusty shell. The aura just came from the jade. Imperial green, this is imperial green. Get rich, I rely on, get rich. Does this kid know there's something in there? Everyone was dumbfounded, and the fat stall owner's eyes widened, and his eyes were about to pop out. David took the jade, looked at it, and put it in his pocket. This thing is a jade pendant to bring to his mother, which can ward off cold and evil spirits and nourish the body. Just as David put the jade in his pocket and was about to leave, the fat stall owner stopped him. Little brother, discuss something, sell this stone to me. The fat stall owner asked with a smile on his face. Not for sale. David shook his head, ready to bypass the fat stall owner and leave. Seeing that David didn't sell it, and insisted on leaving, the fat stall owner's face turned cold, and he changed his friendly face just now, showing a stern look on his face. Little brother, are you mistaken? This jade belongs to me, what are you doing? Can you take it away? Yours. David was stunned. I just bought this, how did it become yours? So many people are watching. What I sold to you was just the lump of iron on the ground. I didn't sell you this jade. You can take that lump of iron, but the jade must be kept. After the fat stall owner finished speaking, 5 or 6 burly men rushed out of the house behind him, each with a bad face. This guy is still too young. He knows that there is something in it. Go home and open it. Open it here. Isn't that looking for trouble? It's unfortunate this time, the treasure in hand is about to fly, and the Emperor Green is worth at least 1 million. I think it's more than 1 million. The people around felt sorry for David, but no one came forward to say a word for him. David looked at the big men who came out, and the corner of his mouth raised slightly. You are a black shop, blatantly grabbing things. Stop talking nonsense, hand over the jade, and I'll let you go, otherwise you'll never want to leave. The fat stall owner has completely torn his face and no longer pretends to be. I have heard that the antique street hides filth, and it seems to be true. I want to see it today. If I don't hand over the jade, what can you do to me? David smiled coldly with no fear on his face. David's words offended the entire antique street, and many stall owners around him yelled, and even asked the fat stall owner to hurry up and teach David a lesson. Boy, you are courting death. After the fat stall owner finished speaking, he punched David with one punch. The wind is howling, obviously this fat stall owner has practiced, otherwise it is impossible to have such speed and strength. Think about it, if you don't have a second chance, how dare you open a store here to deceive people? Chapter 30. David snorted coldly, and directly stretched out his hand and slapped it out. The last one came first. David slapped the fat stall owner on the greasy face and turned the fat stall owner a few times. Stop. Half of his face was red and swollen, and he had a fat head and big ears. Now his face is swollen again, this time it looks like a pig's head. Give it to me, kill him. The fat stall owner roared. Several burly men charged directly towards David, roaring from their mouths. Bang bang bang. But just rushed up, in the blink of an eye, all the strong men were kicked back by David, and then fell to the ground and couldn't get up again. This time, everyone was stunned. The shouting merchants just now closed their mouths one by one, and some even sneaked away. They knew that they encountered a ruthless person today. After being stunned for a moment, the fat stall owner said with a grim face, Boy, you dare to make trouble in Antique Street, do you know who is covering this place? This is the site of Juitong, and it is covered by Tiger Lord, just wait. Die. The fat stall owner knew that as soon as the word Juitong came out, even if the King of Heaven came, he would tremble 3 times. There are a lot of people making troubles in Antique Street, and even the inspector, the pavilion owner and other big figures, but so what, who doesn't slap the butt and leave when they move out of the Jui Hall? Juitong. David smiled coldly. If I say I'm not afraid of Juitong, what can you do? Who's not afraid of me gathering in Yitang? As soon as David's voice fell, a lingering voice came, and then the onlookers instantly got out of the way. A man with a scar on the left side of his face came over, followed by a dozen people behind the man, each with a fierce look. Whether it was a street vendor or a crowd watching, after seeing these people, one by one clearly showed fear. When the fat stall owner saw the man, he immediately climbed over. Brother Scar, this kid is making trouble here, and he even robbed me of the jade that I want to honor Tiger Lord. That's Emperor Green, Tiger Lord likes it the most. This fat stall owner's ability to see the wind and the rudder is truly amazing. Imperial Green. Scar's eyes lit up. Boy, take out the jade and take a look. Are you from Lin Tianyu? David looked at Scarface and asked. Damn, can you call the name of Lord Tiger too? The fat stall owner jumped up, pointed at David and said, this is Brother Scar, the #1 general under Lord Tiger's account, and the security of this antique street is Scar is in charge. David ignored the fat stall owner, but looked at Scar's face and showed his ring. Do you know this ring? Scarface glanced carefully, and said with a look of disdain, a broken copper ring, what is there to know? Now you hand over the jade, I can forgive you for being disrespectful to Lord Tiger. David took out the jade. The emerald green jade shone brightly, making the scarred face gleam in the eyes. Quick, leave it to me. Scarface beckoned to David. David played with the jade and said lightly, since you don't know my ring, let Lin Tianyu come. As long as he comes and wants this jade, I can give it to him. What did you say? Scar's face became annoyed. Is the Tiger Master you can see if you want. Who do you think you are? It seems that I have to force me to do something I don't know. If you don't call, I can call him. David took out his mobile phone. Do you have a phone number for Lord Tiger? Scarface frowned. To know who Lin Tianyu is, not everyone can have Lin Tianyu's phone number. Now that David has Lin Tianyu's phone number, it can't be an ordinary person. 139,322. David directly reported Lin Tianyu's phone number, looked at Scar's face and said, did you call or I call?